In the modern gaming industry, it can feel like every other game is a sequel, the umpteenth entry in a franchise is on their feet. The Final Fantasy series alone has over 90 games to its name, including spin-offs and mobile installments, and that's not even the biggest one. Gaming needs some more variety, but we don't have to rely on fresh faces and new ideas when there are plenty of pretty damn good franchises that fell flat on their faces on their first outing. Releases that may have reviewed well, but that failed to live up to their publishers' lofty sales standards or just sold terribly overall. Even games that simply set up solid ground for that sequel to be the breakout hit that the original outing should have been. These games show that just because you missed your overly optimistic sales expectations doesn't mean you're any less of a blast to play or any less deserving of that big budget sequel. I'm Cy for WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 underappreciated video games that deserve a sequel. Number 10, Enslaved, Odyssey to the West. You can have everything you'd think a game would need: star power, gorgeous visuals, fun gameplay, an interesting story and engaging characters, and success is still not guaranteed. On the other side of every sale, there's a decision, and if people don't feel like your title is the best use of their money at that specific time, then you're out of luck, no matter how wonderful it is. Take Enslaved, for example. Slapped together by the talented team of Ninja Theory, it had everything going for it. With its sharp dialogue and character interactions slap bang in the middle of when those were at their peak popularity, thanks to the Uncharted series, it should have been a hit. The whole world should have been primed to enjoy the adventures of Monkey and Tripitaka, but on the horizon there stirred a beast, a shambling behemoth. Its name was Call of Duty Black Ops, and it released less than a month after Enslaved, meaning it sucked up a lot of the advertising space in the preceding weeks, as well as saved up pocket money. To make matters worse, in the very same month as Enslaved, we had Fallout New Vegas and Fable 3, so Enslaved wasn't so much released as kicked out of the door into a firing squad. And because of this, there's almost no chance we'll get a pole-swinging, nimbus-riding, piggyback-giving sequel out of our two protagonists. Ah well, at least we'll always have Pigsy's perfect 10. Number 9, Singularity. Starting with a doomed helicopter ride into an abandoned Soviet science facility with a beefy soldier voiced by Nolan North, you'd be forgiven for mistaking it for almost any other shooter from an Activision studio. But if you manage to push past all this, you've shortly have found out that while Singularity looks like a by-the-numbers, grunty, muscle-bound, patriotic shootathon, it's actually a time-travelling, grunty, muscle-bound, patriotic shootathon. During development, deadlines caused a big chunk of story content to be removed due to the technical constraints of having to render the world twice in 2 different states while swiftly moving from one to the other, a la the Medium. Many time-travelling set pieces and entire chunks of finished product were excised just to get it out on time, as opposed to spending the required man-hours to work out the kinks, leaving Singularity feeling gutted and a little bit rough around the edges, like it never really got to explore its own premise properly. But with the standardization of super-fast SSDs and Microsoft's direct storage, a Singularity sequel could have no problem blasting between 50s Russia and 2010s Russia as smooth as Slivichny Masla. That's Russian for butter, don't you know? Making for a more complete experience, a more enjoyable game, and who knows, maybe even greater franchise potential down the line. Number 8, Mad World. If there's one thing you couldn't call Mad World, it's unoriginal. Just look at it. In a dystopian future hell world where people use death and violence as entertainment, you must take part in the game show Death Watch and win yourself a fortune through creative butchery. On top of that, you're not just some schlub, you're a chainsaw-wielding slab of meat with a hairy chest and a violent disposition. Mad World then has you tearing through area after area and boss after boss as 2 seasoned professional killers commentate your every slash and stab. Points are awarded for kills with extra multipliers for multi-kills and how unique your kill is. It's all very well uppercutting someone into the air and slicing them in half from balls to brain, but wouldn't you rather put a bin over their head and impale them with a road sign first? Needless to say, reviewers loved Mad World with its campy humour, black and white comic book art style and extreme violence. However, being a Wii game, that last part was probably more to its detriment than its advantage. The Wii was already considered to be more of a kid/family console, and so many quote-unquote hardcore gamers that would be interested in this kind of goreathon just didn't own the hardware. It's not really the type of thing you'd buy your gran for Christmas, unless you're looking at picking up your inheritance early. Number 7, Vanquish. In the distant future, the newly installed Russian government uses a giant microwave to destroy San Francisco. Instead of sending a thank you card, the USA sends our protagonist Sam, fitted with an experimental battlesuit, to infiltrate said giant microwave to take the fight to those damn communists. Vanquish is a video game about speed and guns, and shooting those guns at high speed, preferably while on your knees and smoking a cigarette while heavy metal blares all around you. Sam vaults over cover to lay down fire, gently feeds enemy rockets back into the orifices they were fired from, and drop kicks crowds of bad guys to death in slow motion. It's the kind of intentionally over-the-top ridiculousness we just don't see enough of anymore. It's got no illusions about being anything more than a fun, carefully crafted experience about shooting people real good, and it nails every aspect of the formula. Critics said it was a blast, but a little bit short, and sadly a lot of people take a sort of pounds per hour approach to buying games as opposed to just enjoying fun. You could easily see it as an open world title, taking full advantage of the battlesuit for fast traversal, or even just a larger scale linear experience where Sam can spearhead a counter invasion against the Russians, complete with hilarious Russian side characters looking to restore the pre-coup government. Number 6, Never Dead. With the Souls series at its highest point of popularity, allow me to introduce you to its total opposite, Never Dead, the game where it takes real concerted effort to die. While our protagonist Bryce may be immortal, he's not invincible, and seemingly as part of this immortality curse, his limbs appear to be attached with sticky tape, as they'll fly off the moment an enemy brushes lightly up against you. Lose a leg and Bryce will start hopping around moving slightly slower, lose both legs and all you can do is crawl, lose an arm and you're down to only using one of your dual guns at a time, and so on and so forth. Getting Bryce's limbs to reattach is as easy as dodge rolling over them, making them magnetically zip up and back onto your torso. It may sound like a liability to be so loosely attached to your own limbs that they constantly drop off, but Bryce can use this ability to traverse tight areas by tearing his head off and masterfully rolling it around through vents and the like, and his immortality allows him to use himself as a human torch by lighting himself on fire. It's this unique approach to the gameplay and tying every element of that gameplay into Bryce's condition of immortality that makes Never Dead so unique, and a sequel that expands even further on his abilities and his past would at the very least be interesting. Number 5, Alpha Protocol. It feels like every other game bills itself as open-ended, granting the player the ability to play and take the story in many different directions. More often than not, this is a gross exaggeration. Alpha Protocol tried to buck this trend by focusing mostly on the places you can take the story within dialogue trees, by offering as much variety as possible, while keeping the gameplay itself fairly fenced in. Dropped into the shoes of Michael Thornton, the game starts off looking pretty simplistic, with the only choice of 2 preset classes or a complete blank slate to edit to your heart's desire. But later on you'll find that the meat of the experience, and the vast majority of the enjoyment people take from Alpha Protocol, is through the wealth of choices you have in story progression. Depending on the order you take missions, and how you interact with characters, and at what times, you can end up with drastically different playthroughs, and just seeing how Thornton interacts with his cohorts and enemies as you do very professional things like hang up on your boss, or pretend to have communications problems so you can execute surrounding bad guys. The promise of Alpha Protocol is tied into the variability of its story, and a sequel that could deliver a future for every possible endpoint would genuinely be a step up in what we expect from narrative-driven video games. Number 4, Dark Void. Sometimes your game just needs a little bit longer to cook, get those edges sanded down, and at the very least finish inserting all the content. Dark Void is yet another title that got pushed out of the door before it was ready and into an unforgiving launch window. An ambitious mixture of arcade-style flight simulator and third-person cover shooter, Dark Void absolutely sings once you push past the first hour or so. In the game you'll take on, and prepare yourself for this, Nazi-supporting robot lizards alongside a ragtag group of human resistance fighters made up of people who have become stranded in the Bermuda Triangle over the years. This includes Nikola Tesla, who introduces you to his latest invention, only a bloody jetpack. It's from there that it really picks up speed and starts living up to its potential. The inclusion of the jetpack into large open spaces filled with smaller objectives lets you mix it up, swapping between aerial combat and ground combat at will. Dark Void's main issue is that it ends just as it's starting to reach its peak, as in it literally cuts from what feels like the midpoint of the story to the final boss. The real tragedy is the possibilities of the continued story. It ends with a return to the real world, jetpack in tow, just in time to get busy introducing the allies to jetpack technology and setting up an alternate World War II Rocketeer style game that we'll sadly never get to play. Number 3, Heavenly Sword. Heavenly Sword was an early PS3 exclusive that saw players guiding around a red-headed warrior called Noriko and smacking people with the titular Heavenly Sword. Taking inspiration mostly from God of War, Heavenly Sword bases its combat around changing stances between fast, range and strong, depending on which kind of enemies you're fighting, and on quick time events, as they were very much in vogue back then. It's competently put together and tons of fun to play, and sometimes you even get a nice motion control crossbow level where you can try your best to fit as many crossbow bolts as possible into one guy's balls before he hits the ground. Where Heavenly Sword really sets itself apart is in the quality of the writing and acting, with every single character being distinct and well written. They all have their own consistent personalities, motivations and arcs, and motion capture is used to make the cutscenes as believable as possible, with the particular standout being Andy Serkis in his role as King Bohan, the ultimate bad guy, and the means by which we meet most of the colourful and sometimes terrifying characters Heavenly Sword has to offer. The characterization was so strong that it got both an animated series and a film, as well as a sequel that was tragically cancelled due to the game's poor sales, and as part of moving Ninja Theory on to developing Enslaved: Odyssey to the West, see previous. Number 2, Binary Domain. It's all very well to talk about crowded release schedules, rushed development, unfinished products, and unreached potential, but sometimes the problem is the public. Sometimes gamers, you make me so mad. Binary Domain has it all: slick third-person shooting, tight controls, a unique art style, technical innovation, likable characters, a future setting where human-like robots have infiltrated society even beknownst to themselves. It even has a French robot that does spin kicks and calls you monsieur. And to make this game even cooler, you can give your squad commands, commendations, and just generally interact with them via your microphone. Characters will react to what you say and can gain or lose trust in you depending on how you act. Lose enough trust with the character and they'll start refusing to do what you say, like an over-leveled Pokemon. So if Binary Domain is so bloody good in every way, why didn't it sell well? Why aren't we on to Binary Domain 4, the robotening? Well, dear viewer, I blame you. You chose not to buy Binary Domain. You refused to heed all those glowing reviews and pretty marketing spots Sega bought to evangelize this masterpiece. Games fail for all sorts of reasons. Just be glad that the game's producer, Daisuke Sato, expressed interest in bringing it back after Yakuza's renewed success in the West. If that ever happens, you'll know what to do. Number 1, Sunset Overdrive. It's been a common complaint of late that the Xbox has no exclusives. Past Halo and you'd struggle to find a title beyond Gears of War that you can only play on the Microsoft machine. It wasn't always this way. There was once a time when third-party studios were very interested in bringing games to the Big X, Sunset Overdrive being a standout from the previous generation. A member of the barely populated comedy video game genre, Sunset Overdrive is a colourful, bombastic, violent, and almost obnoxiously tongue-in-cheek experience. Kind of parody that does exactly what it's parodying while winking at the camera. But underneath all these self-abasement and dick jokes, there was genuinely a fun experience based completely around bouncing on the hoods of cars and skating along electrical wiring. Insomniac brought their A-game here, along with their knack for inventive weaponry, giving us guns that fire vinyl records, teddy bears, and fireworks, among other things. The world is vibrant and colourful, and moving through it is so cathartic, you could spend entire play sessions just bouncing, skating, and wall running around. As such, Sunset Overdrive sold really well, and everyone really liked it. So why we've not seen a sequel yet is a mystery.